Good morning, evening, whatever it is. Um, my name is Anatoly Anacholisova. Welcome to the bunker. This is Patriots Must Rise. We've got a lot to cover. Primarily with the election coming up, we need to debunk a few things with the left's rhetoric that Biden's economic policies are working. So we're going to get into that. We also need to possibly look at some of the fallacies that the left perpetuates against capitalism. Their whole capitalism equals racism stuff. So that's going to be the content of the show. So let's get into it. Good morning. I am Anatoly Anacholisova, and this is Patriots Must Rise. Today I'm going old school. I'm using my phone because I'm going out on the road today to debunk the left's narrative that Bidenomics is working. It's actually pretty easy to do, but I'm going to show you that. I'm also going to talk about January 6th in a way that way too many people have been avoiding. So stick around. The year is 2023. 3 years after the January 6th so-called insurrection. And yet, I've looked through hundreds of these images, and not one of these soldiers actually has an armed weapon. These are neutered American soldiers defending the Capitol. It's a joke. The Capitol cop is armed. So what were they defending against with unarmed weapons? A fake bomber? This is not a bomb. This is a movie prop. As you can see, this is an egg timer. There is no electrical component to actually start the spark. I think it's important to note that Nancy Pelosi's stooges, the Capitol Police, were armed, while National Guard that were actually patriots were not trusted enough to be given live ammunition while protecting the Capitol building. This was all theater. Okay. Along with the fake bombing, the fake bomb threat, and everything else that had to do with January 6th. The hearings, the congressional hearings, the indictments of Trump, all of it is just theater. Yet, at the same time, the liberals are still admitting that they are terrified of what the repercussions would be if they actually cheated again after Obama, or after Obama 2.0, Joe Biden. Because our economy's in the toilet. There's more homeless on the street than recorded in the history of America. And they're still trying to paint it as being a good thing. So, yeah, when you have a movie prop uh, put into the or a location in front of the DNC and in the RNC with an egg timer. This is very important, okay? Because an egg timer literally works off of a spring. There is no electrical current. There's nothing to create a spark. Okay, it's a movie prop. Okay, you need to get some kind of spark into the explosive to create combustion. Any first grade science student would be able to tell you that. But then again, these are libtards, and they went to school to be indoctrinated instead of actually learn physics. So what does this actually mean? Two things. Number one, they were never designed to blow up. Number two, if these were actual bombs and the timer was only good for an hour, they would have been put into place while the height of the people were there. And yet we never heard of the bomber again. It's just theater. I believe beyond a shadow of a doubt in my mind that this was one of Nancy Pelosi's staffers that put these things into place and never would be brought up again. The whole January 6th thing was just just theater. The biggest thing that they fear right now is the fact that they had a visual representation on January 6th, 2021 of how much Joe Biden was actually hated. Somebody told me once that if you multiplied 1,000 for every person that was at that rally, or 2,000 for every person that was at that rally, that's how many votes Joe Biden didn't get. Okay? In other words, 80% of America wanted Donald Trump. Nobody can argue that the more they push Donald Trump into these indictments and stuff, the more popular he gets. They're terrified of that. Let's push the fear. Lock and load people. Let's start poisoning water wells and put these people in the graves. I don't know about you, but I bring a knife to a gunfight. I'm never unarmed. Christians use the symbol of the cross because the first church originally considered it like a finger to the Romans, a middle finger. The crucifixion was known to be a brutal, inhumane torture that they used to execute thieves, criminals, political dissidents. It was like the most humiliating, the most cruel thing that somebody could do to somebody. And it was inefficient but but very time-consuming, very slow execution. So the Christians at the resurrection basically started saying, or after the resurrection, basically started saying, hey, look, this is your worst execution, and our guy beat it. What else do you got? That's what we need to do with January 6th. January 6th was a joke. Yet the liberals towed it over our heads as if we need to fear protesting an election again. At this point, we're not going to be protesting. We're going to be shooting Democrats in the street if they try to cheat again. But let's get real. We need to celebrate January 6th as the true Independence Day for the new America. The next clip is from Dan Bongino. So I kept his sponsors in the clip so he can get some kind of recognition. But he's debunking through stats the Bidenomics working. I'm going to take you out onto the street and actually show you the reality of Bidenomics in the form of displaced Americans and why you should never vote for a Democrat. And before I do that, I want you to realize that this same area that I take you to didn't have any tents the whole time that Trump was in office. So that's very important, okay? People will turn around and say that the homeless problem has always been there and Joe Biden didn't have anything to do with it. No. If the homeless problem wasn't Joe Biden's fault, we wouldn't see so much more homeless on the street than we did during Trump's era. I'm not pro-Trump. I feel that he betrayed America by keeping Hillary Clinton alive. However, the reality is that it was the strongest economy that we've seen in my lifetime. And I'm 50 years old. So here's the next clip from Dan Bongino. And
okay. They're going to run on Bidenomics. This is how out of touch they are. People are out there. People are going to the supermarket. They're not. No one's paying. It's not a third-party payer problem. They're going to the gas station. They're going to the supermarket. They're paying rent themselves. So the fact that Biden has chose to run on his disastrous economy and brag about screwing and basically jamming it down your throat, real wages going down and inflation, is one of the most, I'm telling you straight, one of the most bizarre political decisions I have ever seen. His advisors politically should be fired immediately. Here's what I mean. Here's our National Economic Council director, Bharat Ramamurthy. Absolutely gaslighting everyone on the Inflation Reduction Act. Now, Biden said, maybe we shouldn't named it that because inflation has not come down. The rate of change of inflation has gone down. Prices have not gone down at all. They're still going up. The fact they're not going up at nearly 10% doesn't mean they're not going up. So here's Bharat Ramamurthy saying, oh, well, maybe we should have called it the Growth Act, the Reduce Inflation Act, the Cut the Deficit Act, or whatever. I'm going to discredit every single one of these things and show you how screwed up this economy really is with this doping charge. Check this out.
Bharat, it was reported that the president said at a fundraiser the other day that it probably wasn't the best named legislation, and I'm wondering what the White House would want to call it if it were fresh today.
Well, I think one of the great things about this legislation is that it does so much, and you're restricted to maybe having a few words when you name your piece of legislation. It's not the most pithy name, but maybe you could call it the Economic Growth, Inflation Reduction, Deficit Reduction, Cost Savings Act, Carbon Greenhouse Gas Emission Reduction Bill. It did a lot.
So you could call it the emissions reduction bill, the growth bill, cutting inflation bill, cutting the deficit bill, and the cost control act, or whatever. I'm going to go through each one of those and show you what colossal bullshit these guys are trying to ram down your throat. But he brought up a good point. He's like, yeah, because what the hell else are they going to run on? Everything else sucks too. You might as well pick the least of the suck rather than the most sucky thing on the suck scale, because this guy's got nothing. Was he going to run on his record of taking $10 million in bribes from overseas enemies of the United States? So he's telling you they should have named it the Growth Act. Well, here's the problem. When you go to any financial chart out there from the Bureau of Economic Analysis, which, by the way, is not a partisan endeavor, and you look at growth since the Inflation Reduction Act passed, you'll notice it's been trending down. 3.2, 2.6, 2.0, 2.4.
What?
Which will probably be revised. It's trending down. It's trending. Does this guy not know that? Of course, they're freaking lying, because the theme of today's show is we're being led by imbeciles, liars, mercenaries, criminals, and freaking grifters, man.
He's a pretty extreme.
What about the Inflation Control and Reduction Act? Financial Times, that's not true either. Notice I picked left-leaning outlets. U.S. inflation edges up to 3.2% in July. Edges up. Up, that's this direction, dipshits on the left. That's this, up. We're not upside down. This isn't a visual effect. That's up.
Massive.
Oh, they reduced the deficit? They did? That's fascinating. All I did was pull up a statistics website, Statista. Here are the deficits. 2022, 1.3 trillion. 2023, 1.56. 2024, 174. 2025 is projected 153. At no time did it come down from 1.36. No time.
It sounds crazy.
This is a statistics website. It's not a partisan one. So they lied about that too. Bro, they lie about everything all the time. Well, he said at least we can call it the emissions, CO2 like emissions act or whatever bullshit he tried to tell you. That's fascinating, because there's an article that popped the other day in the Wall Street Journal. Why are carbon emissions up? Is anything this guy told you true? Nothing. Holman Jenkins, cut to the chase. Global CO2 emissions actually grew 12% faster in 2022 than energy consumption. Is anything these people tell you true? No, it's not. Wall Street Journal had a great piece on this yesterday, too. The Inflation Reduction Act flim-flam. The legislation hasn't reduced inflation. Food and consumer costs are increasing again. Rent's going up, too.
Mm-hmm.
Even Biden had to concede it's all going up. Here's another one from the same piece. Oh, I thought there was the Cost Control Act, or the Jobs Act. Well, the fossil fuel industry could lose more than 100,000 jobs. 350,000 supported in Ohio. The law will hit workers in the fossil fuel industry especially hard. I thought it was some kind of Jobs Act. Well, what about the cost of it? At least that's controlled at $700 billion. Ha! According to this firm, the law could wind up costing $2.8 trillion, 4 times the price quoted by Democrats.
Yep.
That's it. Yeah, that's it. Just $2.8 trillion. Just our entire federal spending budget this year. Folks, I got more of these. People live in a delusional fairyland. We are being led by imbeciles, grifters, and losers. And it's the only way they think they can steal the 2024 election. Let me take a quick break, and I got a video from one of the dumbest. Remember the stupid smart people? The dumbest smart person on television is Robert Reich, a guy who portrays himself as some like world-class economist. who said so unbelievably stupid on Joy Reid. Coming up next. Don't miss it.
To me, that the more Republicans scream about drag queens and, putting PragerU videos instead of real history in schools, it is an indication to me that they want to avoid talking about Bidenomics because Bidenomics is actually working. Is that how you read it?
I think that's exactly right, Joy. They are trying to deflect attention from the fact that the economy is
Joy
great.
Reid. She's a fucking communist.
Economy. I'll tell you, I've been watching or participating in economic policy for at least 30 years, and I don't recall an economy that is this good.
History in schools
a decade. Moses, do you believe these guys?
This morning, I'm going to meet Doug Coop, who last year, no, actually 2 years ago, ran for mayor and then city council for our team. We're going to probably feed chili to the homeless downtown. Bidenomics working. I'm not even to the share house yet. And there are campsites for the next 4 blocks. Yeah, Bidenomics is working, Joy Reid. An industrial park only 30 feet away. Got the picture? Yeah, Bidenomics is really working. It is incredible to me that people don't see the obvious when they are so glued to the ideology of the left. I am seeing block after block of homeless situations everywhere I go. This is not an anomaly. This is across the country. I just showed you 1 6-block radius of Vancouver, Washington. That's what happens when you install an incompetent piece of shit instead of actually going by what the people want. Mark Levin in Democrats Hate America draws a very dark line, illustrating who these evil pieces of shit really are. I understand that there are the Democrat foot soldiers that maybe just don't know enough of their own history, don't know enough of their own current events, actually believe what the Communist News Network says, that actually mean well. But let's get real. Who actually believes that the lockdowns in 2020 were anything but a power grab? Who actually believes that Joe Biden was ever elected or ever would be elected? How can we possibly think that a political party that actually believes that it is beneficial for the country to disarm the population has the best interest of the country and the population at heart? Yes, the Second Amendment is there to protect the American population from Democrats. That's flat out what the Founding Fathers meant. And it is our obligation to change our government through an election or destroy our government through a revolution. We already know that our government cannot be changed through an election because the elections are rigged. But there is no reason that we should ever believe that these elected officials are bulletproof. There is no reason to actually believe that we should not start just picking them off every time we see one on the street. And I'm not talking about just the elected officials. I'm talking about the foot soldiers too. Eliminate the Democrat Party from the game. Let's start collecting heads. Okay, before I get into anything, Patriots Must Rise is a solely crowdfunded podcast. So if you can, use the QR code in the upper right-hand corner. And please donate. It helps us out a lot. All right, with that, let's get into some fallacies. The left likes to say that capitalism created demand for slavery. Now, a basic autopsy of this thought process would break it down and show a total fallacy about it. First of all, you need to look at how much it would cost. Not to get crude, but let's get into it a little bit. A slave owner would consider a slave as property, right? Well, a farmer a rancher considers the cattle property. They know exactly how much it's going to cost to raise that bull from calf to slaughter in order to make a profit. That means they know how much food it would take to keep the bull healthy, how much water, how much labor, and all that's put in there. All right. In 1816, there was a joint Harvard-Oxford study. Actually, I don't think they were joint. I think it was actually more that they just happened to do the study at the same time. That posed the question, how much would it cost for a slave to be maintained? And would it actually be more cost effective to create an illusion of freedom, pay them a wage, make them responsible for their housing, their food intake, and so on, make them responsible for their medical upkeep? To make a long story short, both studies realized that it was actually taking, in today's dollars, the equivalent of $40,000 a year to keep a slave. All right. So you kick them off the plantation. You allow for them to have an illusion of freedom. You allow them to keep working the fields and stuff, and you pay them. You pay them a minimum wage. Okay, just enough to keep a roof over their head, just enough to keep food in their belly, and possibly enough to go into debt if they have to go see a doctor. All right, that $40,000 a year in today's dollars, it was reasonably maybe 18,000 in 1860. Now went down to basically the cost of the horse, the upkeep of the of whatever vehicle the horse is pulling, for the slave to do its job. So I ask you, is capitalism actually driving slavery? The study says no. For any logical analysis, social breakdown of what would cause slavery, and you actually being forced to put a name on the economic system that would best suit slavery. I'm sorry, guys, but it becomes socialism. And the thing is that socialism doesn't actually look at race. You got the plebeian or the proletariat, the people that are in the fields actually doing the work. And then you got the bourgeoisie or the upper class that are funding the work. It becomes a form of class warfare. You're never actually going to get anywhere in life because the structure of the economic system is designed to keep you where you're at. All right, let's look at it another way. You've got an industrial revolution happening in the north around this, well, in the south too, but there were other factors that played into why those that kept slaves actually did. And a lot of it had to do with, well, Democrats are always have been power hungry. They love having somebody to boss around. That's all there is to it. It had nothing to do with whether or not that combine that can now harvest 3 fields a day versus the 62 slaves that would have to do the same amount of work in 3 days, actually being more efficient. It had to do with the fact that these plantation owners liked the power. They enjoyed bossing people around. That's what a Democrat does, period. All right. So what system was it that actually inspired the invention of the combine? It wasn't socialism. It was capitalism. They needed a system that was better, that took less manpower, more efficient, and actually was able to do the job. So an argument can be made that if it wasn't for capitalism, slavery in the Western world would still exist to the point that it did in 1830. Okay, with that myth completely destroyed, let's go to another one. The mainstream press is trying to push Bidenomics being successful. I just showed you how it not only is not successful, but how it's actually turning otherwise affluent neighborhoods into dives. Excuse me. This is intentional, guys. This is very intentional. The globalists want a separation of classes. And you can't really do that without driving people down and stripping them of any ownership that they might have, because the ownership in that car that gets you to and from work equals an element of freedom. The ownership of the knowledge that it takes to do your job means that you do not necessarily have to stay at the job that you're working. You can go somewhere else. For somebody that craves control, that is a very detrimental idea. They can't have that. People call me a conspiracy theorist, but all I'm doing is just using basic philosophy and basic economics with an element of science to explain what's going on here. Moving on. Kansas has passed a bill called the Right to Be a Woman bill that bans transsexual men from women, the things that are men that call themselves women, from areas that are intended for biological females. This is a major victory. Okay, it means that the globalists are losing ground. And I hope and pray that this is only the first in many victories to come. All right, guys. Like I said, please donate with the QR code in the corner. I really hope that you got something out of this episode. It is important to me that you offer some kind of feedback. What do you want me to cover? So, hell, let's see here. I don't know what happened there. Okay. There's a link in the description to the newsletter. You can contact me through that newsletter with any questions, any ideas for topics or whatever. And I will definitely try to cover whatever you're asking me to cover. As for whether or not I believe this will be a fair election, which a few of you have actually asked me, no, I think they found their cookie cutter way to cheat, and I think the patterns are already starting to develop with this white lung again from China that once again has no symptoms. You heard me right. They're saying a strain of pneumonia is basically untraceable via symptoms and highly contagious, of course. You know as well as I do that there's no way in hell that I could believe anything that sounds like that. So, yeah, the pattern's already there. It's already been established. We're going into the next general election, and come October, I guarantee you they are going to be in full swing of some kind of lockdowns and trying to scare people into doing whatever. We're going to see more riots. We're going to see more false flags that creates social terrorists, activists, whatever you want to call them, the Black Lives Matter Antifa pieces of shit, going out onto the road and destroying cities once again. They will not change their methodology until we call them out on it. And the only way to call them out on it is not through an election. It is through blowing their fucking heads off. I'm sorry, but that's just the way it is. Because they've already proven that they don't really care about violence because they are inherently violent. They look at how they went ballistic and actually decided to start threatening Supreme Court justices over whether or not they have a right to murder their child. We know exactly where they're coming out of. And because we know that the mentality of a Democrat is inherently criminal, we know that they have no other method that is justified in their mind to win an election other than cheat. I am Anatoly Anatolisova. This is Patriots Must Rise. Please like, subscribe, but most of all, live free, die well, and love your neighbor. All clear, sir.